Hey guys, welcome. If you've been in relationship of any kind for any length of time, eventually you know you get to conflict. Conflict can be a huge derailer in organizations, a huge drain on productivity, morale, and again, it doesn't have to be that way, but a lot of times people don't know what to do about it, and so we get silent. What I'd like to give you today is a way of thinking about the dynamics that are involved in healthy relationships and how that can move to unhealthy. And when we understand some of those natural dynamics, we can then take steps to avoid it. We can also use this model that I'm going to show you as a tool, a diagnostic to help two people who are in conflict begin to see where they are and work through it. So today we're going to be talking conflict resolution and the role renegotiation model. Let's get started. So what you see in front of you is the role renegotiation model. It goes back to the early 70s. I first encountered it when I was on the board of a church in the mid 90s, and the consultant who worked with us used this model as a way to introduce to us human dynamics, how we form and develop and expect things of one another, and how those can go awry, and then what you need to do to fix it. So I've been enchanted with this and with models, I think, ever since that time, because it really hit me. I really think this is a fabulous model. It takes some complex topics and puts it in a way that everybody can understand it. I hope you will also enjoy this. So I'm going to start here, right? Now I got my little laser pointer here. This handout is something that I provide to clients when I'm working with them. If you'd like a copy of this, please leave a comment in the section below. Give me your email address and I will shoot you a copy of this. You can use this as part of your work too. So back to it. The model begins with information sharing and expectations. We develop expectations of one another. In their model, this is meant to represent all human relationships. So every relationship, from the most casual to the most deep and long-lasting, from somebody who's your Uber driver for a morning, all the way up to someone that you choose to marry. It always begins with some sharing of information until we're clear, we think we're clear at least, on what we can expect of the other person. The other person is also gaining information, and they're clear, at least in their head, on what they can expect of us. Once we both get that level of comfort, then we make some kind of formal commitment. I am offered the job. I accept the Uber. The Uber driver comes and picks me up. And we exchange wedding vows. A formal commitment is made. And once we have some kind of formal commitment, we can both relax a little bit and we move to a place where we're each giving to one another what the other expects for the most part, and getting from them what we expect. So there's a value exchange, and we're at a place of stability and productivity. Now, that's the ideal place. And yet we know a couple of things, actually. Why does this not continue forever? People change, their needs change, and so their behaviors change. So that's one, changing people. The other reason why we sometimes get away from stability and productivity is that in this initial exchange of information, it wasn't full and complete. However long I'm with a person in a relationship, I never can know everything about them. They can never reveal everything about themselves. So we're always operating on incomplete data until a new situation brings forth new data of which we were unaware. In any case, when people change or a new situation crops up, we can get to what's called the pinch. It's a decision point. That is, a pinch is when one person, one of the two parties, feels like their expectation was not met. Typically, because it's pinch is defined, is one person feels it. One person is aware something's not right. It's usually a small thing. So when we're on a work team together, we're on a project team, we have meetings, and we've been pretty good. We always have it at 9 o'clock, and pretty much everybody's there ready to rock and roll. And then we have our weekly meeting, and you're late by 5 minutes. Again, 5 minutes is not big, but you kind of rush in, you don't say anything about it, and I'm sitting there and I'm irritated. At that moment, because I had to hold off getting the meeting started. So at that moment, I'm experiencing what they call a pinch. Now, my expectation wasn't met. I have a choice at this point. The choice here with the dashed lines, which is to minimize it, that's the path that most people take most of the time. That is, I won't speak directly and say, hey, you were 5 minutes late, and let's talk about what we need from one another. Has your situation changed? No, I won't do that because I don't want to appear to be the butthead. I don't want conflict. There's all these social things that it's uncomfortable. Right? So I'll take the path of least resistance and I'll just minimize it. Oh, okay, don't worry about it. If I say anything, it'll be, hey, we need to be on time, but it won't be direct. You'll nod your head and we'll move back to a place where we kind of reinforce the commitment. But by the very nature of how we did it, it wasn't real. It's kind of a pseudo commitment now. And so, predictably, when we have those pseudo commitments, we move to a place back to stability and productivity. But pretty rapidly, we're going to come back to that same pinch because it wasn't really head-on addressed. So you may do it again. It may become habitual. We'll get to that in a minute. But I do want to note there is one positive path out of a pinch, which is to address it specifically, let the other person know, let's step into a place and let's acknowledge, hey, perhaps we have different needs. Maybe you've got something going on in your home life or other places in work that means you're going to be later. So we should kind of renegotiate at least our expectations, perhaps when we have the meeting, right? So there's various ways we can handle it, but that's the identify, engage, negotiate. We share new information. We can then make new, more appropriate commitments. We can renegotiate our roles, hence the name of the model, and come to a place of true stability, productivity. But as I pointed out, most people, most of the time, simply ignore it or make a pseudo commitment. Eventually, a few things will happen if it's not addressed. We'll come to a place where we have a crunch. Now, a crunch is when it's obvious that both of us are now in conflict. It's not just one person's issue that they're quiet about. It might be that you did it 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times or whatever. It climbed on my last nerve. And I blew up in front of everybody and I said things I shouldn't have said and I stormed out of the room. Okay. Or it could be, if it's not just those minimal things, you've got the idea that, it doesn't really matter to Rob. I guess, you know what? I had something come up. I'm not even going to show up to the meeting. So it's huge, and you take it one step further. Again, based on some probably logical assumptions, but incomplete information. So when we don't renegotiate, when we don't sit and talk about what our needs are now, eventually pinches will lead us to a crunch. There's only a couple of ways out of the crunch. One way is, I don't want to deal with it, the heck with him, and we develop a very dysfunctional relationship, or actually non-relationship. We disengage from one another. We'll kind of, I don't want to be part of this team, or we'll kind of walk by each other in the hallways and kind of, not look each other in the eye, get the old awkward thing going, right? That's one way to respond to a crunch. The only healthy way is to say, hey, you know what? We've got an issue. let's talk this through. Yes, we've broken some trust. By the time we get to a crunch, somebody's trust, and probably both of them to a degree, have been broken, and now it's a longer path. It takes more time to renegotiate, and it's a harder path because now we don't have the benefit of the trust in one another. The other place, so when we do, you can see the two healthy paths. The healthiest thing to do is when we first feel a pinch, is to let's talk about it. Hey, you know what? I'm not being a jerk. We understand on our team. Anybody can bring up when they feel a pinch, and we talk about it. We renegotiate our expectations of one another so that we're productive. This is the path that we want to be following all of the time. When we get down to a crunch, the only way is to walk back this path and to restore trust, to make amends, to ask for forgiveness, so that we get back to a place where we can talk clearly. At this point, the other way out of the model is one of the parties says, you know what, this isn't what I signed up for, so I'm going to back out. That's a healthy way to leave a relationship. The relationship no longer meets one person's need, so they step out, but they step out cleanly. This way is to quit and stay on the job. So this is the role renegotiation model. I found it fabulous, and in just a second, I'm going to show you a little bit more about how you can actually use this to help people work through their conflict. So now that you understand the model, how can you actually use it to help people who are in conflict? So let's assume you're a manager or you're a good friend, you're a coworker. Pull them together, make sure they understand the model, and then walk them through a series of questions. Question number one, where are we now? That is, where in the model? Now, if they're in conflict, they'll say, want either crunch or pinch, which is fine. Okay, then we can move to, so where and how did we go off the rails? How did we get to this place of crunch? What's going on underneath that? What do we need to renegotiate? Inherent in the model, of course, is the idea that somebody's needs have changed, somebody's reality has changed, so they're no longer living up to the expectations that we negotiated, or we didn't really negotiate very well in the first part. You thought I've said something or committed to something that wasn't my understanding of what I committed to. But either way, the model assumes there is a place for renegotiation. Now we're at a crunch place. We said we were going to be to meetings on time. Okay, how did we go off the rails? Well, I know I saw it, but I just didn't want to raise a fuss. Yeah, and I was starting to get used to it and to take it for granted that I could show up when I wanted to. So this step invites people to start getting real and to actually apologize. That's an important part of any conflict resolution, is that we own the mistakes that we've made, and then we speak to them. But then we can move to step three. So what do we need to renegotiate? Well, it's our expectations of one another and our timeliness in meetings and what constitutes an okay excuse or reason where we won't get our nose out of shape, and how we will talk about it when it happens in the future, should it happen in the future. And that leads us to step number 4. So what do we need to do now? Well, we need to inform the team. We need to start our meetings a little earlier. We need to allow. These are the practical steps that we take to support the new expectations that we've negotiated with one another. All 4 open questions. Notice that we is underlined in each one of these. That's because if we're going to resolve conflict, we're going to have to jump into it together. We both have a part to play. So that's it for today. We've been talking conflict resolution. We've been talking about the role renegotiation model and how this simple model can help you and help your team get past things where people are bumping heads against one another. Thanks for watching. Please like, please subscribe if you're not a subscriber to this channel. Please share this through your social networks. Until next time, be well.